Now I'd like to introduce a special guest speaker from Nielsen. Patricia Ratulani is Vice President of Global Communications DEI at Nielsen, where she oversees Nielsen's internal and external communications focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thanks for being here today, Patricia, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Kate. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and happy Friday. I'm Pat Ratulani from Nielsen, as Kate mentioned, and I'm really honored to be here with you today to kick off this afternoon sessions and share some insights on why you matter, your voice matters in driving diversity and evolving our media industry. Now, the speakers you've listened to throughout this conference, have really blazed trails, and so will the speakers you'll hear this afternoon. But as you've heard, and I think you all know, the work is never done. People are changing. What we want to watch, hear, interact with as audiences are also constantly changing. And what audiences and consumers expect from media, brands, and businesses is also changing. And that means that we in the media industry, in the business world, must deliver. And I think if you look back over the last couple years, there's been a big racial reckoning in this country, and it's added a complexity that has many of us asking, how can we deliver on those expectations? Understanding the power of inclusion is essential to success in today's complex landscape. And honestly, it's why I love what I do. We're able to use our Nielsen insights to help educate and then empower media executives, publishers, advertisers to help move the needle on inclusion in the media industry and the advertising industry. Nielsen is on a mission to create a better media future for all. And that means using our expertise as the standard that drives the media industry, but also provide a way to measure progress to removing systemic barriers. And that's what I'm here to share a little bit about with you today. Now, creating an environment that fosters diversity, equity, inclusion takes all of us leaning in. DE&I is not just a trend, it's really an essential lens for your future success as a brand builder and a strategic leader in the industry. Our research at Nielsen shows that the demand for representation in both content and advertising, that's our sweet spot here, right, is growing right alongside the diverse populations in our country. In a recent research, in fact, that we just fielded, 41% of viewers responded that they were more likely to buy from brands that advertise in content that represents people like them. Now, as brands and businesses of all sizes take all of this into account and look to map a future path forward, your cultural competency as a leader in this business is one of your most valuable assets. So you can help identify and repair the blind spots, especially when it comes to engaging diverse audiences. I was particularly proud of a piece of work we did earlier this year as part of Asia Pacific Heritage Month, where we looked at digital news sites with anti-Asian verbiage placing blame for the pandemic. We identified over 1,200 places where phrases like Kung Flu, China virus, Chinese bioweapon were showing up. And the ads, $153 million in ad spend covering over 60 brands. Now, it's likely that these ads are showing up on these sites with hate speech, unbeknownst to the advertisers. But look, as an advertiser, do you want to have your brand associated even once with this negative content? It's a brand safety risk. And, if you have this knowledge, you can rethink how and where ad campaigns are showing up, ask for accountability from your digital ad placement partners, take a closer look at those programmatic exclusion lists so you can help to build the protective barriers to prevent ads from showing up unexpectedly in those type of content, and also help protect your own brand. The other thing to think about here is that diversity now has so many dimensions, and so navigating the demand for nuanced representation is even more critical, and is another opportunity for you. Now, just taking a look at the latest census data, right? 2044 is when the groups we refer to as minorities today will flip and become the majority in our country. And there's even more nuance even within that multiculturality. About 1 in 10 Americans identify as being multicultural. There's 3.8 million Afro-Latinos in the US, and a 28% increase in Asian Latinos since 2010. Multicultural Americans are the fastest growing demographic in this country. So brands and business will have to navigate how to capture this complexity within populations, but make sure not to be at the expense of others. And then reaching this audience, just the knowledge is pretty well known, right? Video content is still tops. We spend more than half of our daily media time with video across TVs, apps, tablets, smartphones, computers. And diverse audiences are driving demand for representation and actively seeking inclusive content by migrating to platforms that break stereotypes or do a better job of representing who I am, who we are. That's why streaming has been huge and subscription rates are growing exponentially. Just a case in point here, Dallas-Fort Worth, for example, has the fastest growing Asian American population in this country. There's been a 45% increase in streaming devices for Asians, and that's almost double the growth rate for the general population there. So really, if you want to connect with Asian Americans, that's where you need to meet them. And understanding, where the devices are, the programs that are being watched by all diverse audiences, right, is where the sweet spot is. So getting representation right is complex, and measurement is critical so that we know when we are making progress or can identify the gaps that we need to close. So Nielsen's Grace Note Inclusion Analytics is a new tool that we just launched this year to measure content, who's in the audience, who is cast in the leading roles, and what are the themes and stories when folks are being seen on screen. But representation isn't just a numbers game. The context and those stories really matter too. When present on screen, racially and ethnically diverse audiences are looking for authentic representation and storylines that go beyond the tropes. More than 40% of both Hispanic and Asian viewers felt portrayal of their communities are mostly inaccurate. But where's the opportunity? There is one here, and it's that many diverse content creators and media publishers are in demand more than ever before. And as you've been hearing about during this conference, and we hear more of this afternoon, as the future leaders in this media industry, you all have a role to play in understanding and greenlighting this authentic content. I think the biggest takeaway, though, is this. There's room for inclusion and there's opportunity in it. Some examples. Last year, women over 50 outspent their younger counterparts across 25 key categories, dropping nearly $800 million. Talking about working age people with disabilities, discretionary income is about $21 billion for this group. But we found that people living with a disability were featured in just 1% of primetime ads. Globally, LGBTQ buying power is estimated at $3.7 trillion. But a recent Nielsen analysis found that for many brands, the only time they run any TV ads is during Pride Month. There's definitely room for improvement. There's opportunity in that. Beyond that, media truly has the power to influence perception and shape beliefs. We in the media industry have a lot of power to help fight stereotypes, fight racism, and how our increasingly diverse population is engaging with ads and shows continue to evolve. But one thing is clear, the diverse multicultural audience want brands and content creators to deliver representation that engages authentically. Now, that's hard to do without the right expertise in the room and a commitment to cultural competency. And that's where you come in. Now more than ever, we have a responsibility to educate those in our industry to lift up and empower underrepresented and underserved audiences, sending the clear message, you belong here, we are in it together. Thanks so much for your time today. I hope you can learn more about our diverse audience insights by visiting nielsen.com. Check out our insights page for more. And now, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to the moderator for today's keynote. Audrey Adlam is SVP of Communications at HGTV, where she develops and implements press strategy for the network's programming, on-air talent, and consumer marketing initiatives. She's made household names out of many of the network's experts and is a trailblazer in her own right. Over to you, Audrey.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And thanks for that great speech. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. It is really wonderful to be with you, and I am honored to lead this conversation today with Kathleen Finch, who is truly an inspirational, effective, results-driven, impactful, and generous leader who has had a direct and positive influence on my own career. So let me just give you a quick download on who she is. Kathleen is Chief Lifestyle Brands Officer at Discovery, which owns such networks as TLC, Food Network, HGTV, ID, Travel, and OWN. She actually leads a 12 network portfolio. And as part of the day-to-day management of those networks, she and her leadership team greenlight new series and find and develop the hugely popular talent like Guy Fieri, the Property Brothers, Zach Baggins, Big Ed, Tarek and Christina, and many more who you know and love, who have made Kathleen's portfolio of lifestyle brands among the most watched on television, with 4 of her networks ranked among the top 10 in cable. She's a graduate of Stanford University, and her industry awards and honors have already crossed into the realm of way too numerous to mention, but I'll call out that throughout her career, they've included Wix Woman of the Year, Adweek's Television Executive of the Year, Time's 100 Industry Innovators to Watch, and pretty much any organization that bestows a Power Woman Award. She is the proud mom of 3 adult daughters who have their own thriving careers, so she has lots of practice sharing the kind of insights and perspectives that will help you on your professional journey. So please welcome Kathleen Finch.
Oh, Audrey, you're going to make me cry. This is why you're in the communications business. Nobody can spin a story in as lovely a way as you. Thank you so much for that.
It is truly a privilege and a pleasure to have you here today, Kathleen. And I know that the group is in for a treat because you and I have worked together for a very long time. And so I know that you have a lot to offer this group. So why don't we get started? One of the first things, just to make sure that everybody understands what you actually do as Chief Lifestyle Brands Officer, and I chuckle because I know how much you love that title. Tell us, what does your day-to-day look like, just so that everyone understands what your role is?
Well, my day-to-day right now, to be honest, is a lot of managing people, which is not why I got into this business. The reason I got into this business is because I love television and I love creating content. I'm actually a former television journalist, where I spent 12 years at CBS News, sort of telling stories in a different sort of way, and then moved over to unscripted television by joining Food Network about 20 years ago. So my love and my passion is really coming up with ideas for shows, identifying talent, building shows around those talent, working with people like Audrey or our head of marketing, Karen Bronzo, to figure out, all right, we have this great idea, we've made this great show, how can we get it out to America and get them to care about it? And then how can we have amazing things like this week in the People's Sexiest issue, 2 of HGTV talents are in it. So thank you, Audrey Adlam. So it's that sort of fun kind of taking an idea and snowballing it into something big and amazing that a big audience can love. That's why I got into this business and that's what I love. But to be really honest, my day right now is a lot of meetings. It's a lot of meeting with the president of HGTV, the president of Food Network, the president of TLC, and talking about strategy, which is great. And I love doing it, but it's a little different than I'm sure when all of you are thinking about your careers, you're thinking about wanting to be producers or content creators or all the people that make the magic happen. But you get shuttered along like I have, and pretty soon you find yourself more of a people manager than a content manager. But it's still a great business.
Yeah, I mean, and Kathleen, that is very true. That a lot of times we don't realize that our journey is probably going to change. I for one love to write. I love pitching media, but it turns into a different kind of job because then you're evaluated on your ability to grow other people, which is, I think, why this is such an important conversation for us to have, because we want to sort of provide a path for the group that's coming behind us, because you and I are not going to keep doing this, right?
No, please no.
No. Okay. So, you talked about the fact that you started at CBS. Was that your first job? And if not, how did you actually start? Was CBS the first one or?
My first real job was getting out of college. I went to work for Apple Computer, and it was long ago enough that it was called Apple Computer because that's pretty much all they made. And my job was to produce informational videos about, this is how long ago it was, about the value of having a computer in your home, because that was kind of a novelty at the time. This obviously was many, many years ago, but what was really exciting about it was Steve Jobs was there. And it was kind of, in a lot of ways, it was kind of when Silicon Valley was just coming on to be this kind of, place. And I would sit in meetings with him, and he was this big, powerful force. And looking back on it, what an opportunity that was. I only did that job for about a year, but then my first real job was getting into journalism. I worked for local news in San Francisco and then local news in New York, where I grew up. And then happily, I got fired from the local news in New York City. And a good friend of mine happened to have a friend who was at CBS Network, and I'd always wanted to be there anyway. So I managed to turn that unfortunate incident into a really happy chance, which, I think is always something we should remember, that, when you either lose a job or don't get a job or things change, the most important thing you can do in the job that you have is really especially when you're starting out, really be working your connections. Really make sure that when you leave or the impression that you leave a place with is positive and good, and that you've made enough connections so that, like in my case, I lost my job. I didn't even have to look for another one. Somebody recommended me to a friend at CBS. So that's just sort of a good life lesson as you're moving along in your career. You never know who is sitting in the desk next to you, that, whether or not that person can help you later on in life. So just sort of always think of them as a good connection that you should really foster.
And I mean, as you tell that story, you started out working for Apple Computers. It's not like you started in the news business immediately. Mm-hmm. So you were able to take that one opportunity and move it into something way bigger than you expected, right? So yes. If I'm a young woman and I want to break into the business, do you recommend a traditional path, a non-traditional path? Take what you get? What's the best way to do that?
There was a really interesting quote in the opening video that we all saw that I'm a huge believer in, where somebody said, take the job you can get. When there's nothing harder in your career than the first job. Nothing is as hard as getting that first job in the industry that you want to be in, because everybody else will have more experience than you. You need to convince somebody to take a chance on you. Now, you guys are all doing the right things. You've joined this organization. Many of you have internships. You're all doing the right things, and that's excellent. But that first job is the toughest job. I'm a huge believer in identify the place that you want to work and get your foot in the door. So for instance, when I went to CBS Network News, I had been like a researcher and sort of a junior producer at local news in New York at WPIX. When I went to CBS, I took the job of being a secretary, an assistant. Now, the news director happened to be a woman. She was the only woman in network news as a news director. She was pretty infamous for this. She knew that I did not want to be a full-time assistant. And she and I had an honest conversation about that. And I said, look, I will be the best assistant you've ever had, but can I do it for a year? And then, you help me find something else within the news organization. And she stuck to her word. I was maybe not the best assistant she's ever had, but I was okay. But I was enthusiastic. I came in on the weekends. I was just always had a smile on my face and just worked really, really hard. And the only reason I say I wasn't maybe the best assistant is because there were certain skills I wasn't a very good typist. I mean, there were things that I just didn't quite know how to do. But anyway, she took a chance on me. She really helped me in my career and helped me get started. And a lot of my friends said, you're going to take a job as an assistant? You've already been a producer. Yeah, but not at CBS Network News, I wasn't. So I really think if you have a great opportunity and if you're able to work for somebody who has committed to helping you or who you think could help you, take a risk on that job. Don't go work in the ad sales department over, across town just because they're going to pay you $10 more. If what you really want to be is in the newsroom or the production, pit, whatever it is you want to do, try to get your foot in the door and then impress people when you're there.
So Kathleen, based on that experience, someone took a chance on you and now you have an opportunity to bring in young people What kind of qualities are you looking for when you're interviewing people or when you talk to them? I know that you once mentioned in a New York Times interview that you had some certain questions that you like to ask. Would you mind sharing that with the group here today?
Well, that was a long time ago. I can't exactly remember, but I tell you what, what my general theme is whenever I'm talking to somebody is there are two things I always want to know. What makes you want to be in this business? Because I think, and Audrey, you would agree with me because you and I gossip about television shows all the time.
All the time.
You want to be in the television business, you have got to be the biggest television junkie of anyone that you know, because that's what makes this job fun. You shouldn't be doing it because you want to do something else and you just want to try it. I mean, maybe that is your motivation, but I think that, and certainly on anybody on my team, I want them to love television like it's food. And we all do at our company. Before a meeting starts, we gossip about what are you watching? Did you see this? Did you see who produced that? I can't believe that. That's all we do. We just love our business. And we love the fact that it's the entertainment business. My job and Audrey's job is to make people happy. We entertain people. When they go home, they turn our networks on. When they open up USA Today and they're looking for what to watch, Audrey's got our shows right up at the top. We are in the job of making people happy during their free time. That's a luxury and something that really motivates me. So that's a big question I have is, tell me how much you love television. The other thing that I always like to ask people, because what we do is public, what we make is for public consumption. I ask people, what do you think we're doing right? And what would you do differently? Do you think we cast the right person in that show? Do you think the open of that show works well? What do you think about scheduling? Should Tuesdays be these kinds of shows? Or if we're up against sports, should we do something different? I like to ask people, if you're going to join this team, what different sort of thinking are you going to bring? Not just, are you going to get in line and do what the rest of us do?
That's true. And so, of course, I'm going to ask you, what are you watching these days?
Oh my gosh. Well, the sad thing is I watch everything. I have a television in every room of my house, including my bathroom, where I can watch it from my shower, because that is how totally insane I am about television. And the reason is because when I was growing up as a kid, my parents wouldn't let me watch television. And I'm married to a man who didn't have a television in his house. So he and I have just gone bonkers, and we have a lot of televisions now. But what I am watching, I will admit, I am a major Christmas movie fan, as I know you are too, Audrey.
I am too. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
So I'm watching them all, including today. One of my lifelong fantasies came true. We actually produced a Christmas movie with Food Network that we are airing on our new streaming service, Discovery Plus. And that literally was a dream I've had for about 15 years, was to take somebody who's really well known, a talent that's either loved on HGTV, because our fans are rabid about our talent. Yeah. So to take someone like the Property Brothers, or in this case, Ree Drummond, the Pioneer Woman, and produce a Christmas movie that features them, and then put it on our streaming platform. So today it launches, and I feel like a proud mama.
As you should, and especially with its candy-coated Christmas, right? So yes. I've already gotten the buzz on that. So I'm looking forward to watching it. Kathleen, the fact that we are doing, we did this scripted movie. I mean, this kind of leads me to the point that we all know that the cable landscape is changing. Has that impacted decisions that you're making, the people that you're opting to develop as talent? Like how is the change impacting the day-to-day decisions that you make?
Well, I think what's happening is the competition has never been stronger. I mean, it started with Friday nights. People could suddenly stream movies on Friday nights, and they've been doing that big time. One of the challenges that we face, it's both a curse and a blessing. One of the things that our networks have been known for a very long time is being sort of background, sort of feel good wallpaper, things that, set the mood. People talk about, I really want to watch HGTV. They don't necessarily say, I want to watch a show. They just want to turn on HGTV and experience sort of the pretty pictures, the beautiful talent, the happy endings, the things that you can learn along the way. And I say this with all of our networks, including ID, which is a crime network about about as opposite in tone from HGTV as anything could possibly be. But when people are kind of in the mood for that, they love to turn it on and just have it on. That is a fabulous business model, because what that means is that we are delivering content to both our viewers and to our endemic advertisers, meaning if you're Home Depot, you're going to advertise in HGTV because people are watching HGTV with that like-minded, head about them. You're getting a very targeted audience that care. So we used to be able to sort of program the networks with a slightly more, this is going to come out wrong, but a slightly more vanilla kind of everything flowed from one to the next, and everything sort of had kind of the same tone and feel about it. We're pushing the envelope now. We're doing things differently because people are making choices that are not just, let me turn on the television and leave whatever channel's on. They're now making choices to leave cable and do other things. So we have become a network, all of our network groups, really thinking long and hard about big buzzy events, big tent poles. And Audrey, you've had so much to do with some of our biggest, like for instance, 2 years ago, one of the most exciting things that we did at HGTV is we bought the Brady Bunch house. Then we got all the Brady Bunch kids, and many of you were too young to really realize what a watershed moment that was for a lot of us as we were children watching that show. But we assembled the cast of all 6 talent. They had not done anything together in decades. We assembled them all. We bought the house. We renovated the house with HGTV talent to look exactly like it did on the television show that aired in the 70s. And it ended up being just a huge hit on HGTV. It was appointment viewing. It was a big tent pole. That's a little bit new for us. And since then, we've been doing a lot more big, crazy tent pole events. We just had something on ID where it's a very sad story, but we were following the story of Gabby Petito. And as soon as events unfolded and we knew that she unfortunately had passed away, we were ready to go with a big doc about, what really happened, interviewing all the people involved. And so that, again, that's just sort of a different way. We're being a lot more of the moment and thinking about things. Audrey sits in every big green light meeting because, all right, Audrey, how are we going to generate a lot of press about this? The marketing person sits there. How are we going to generate a lot of marketing? How are we going to partner with the Today Show or with People Magazine on this big event? So we're thinking much more from a, how to build buzz as opposed to how to fill a schedule. And that's a different way of thinking.
That's right. Well, I mean, if you want to make your network's household names, there has to be something that we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. And we're starting from a really lucky place. I mean, I would say on whole, the lifestyle networks at Discovery, they are household brands. When you hear Food Network, you know exactly what that is. When you hear TLC, you know exactly what that is. We've worked really hard to make sure that our networks represent something, and that we have a promise to our viewers that if you come to our network, we will satisfy you, because we don't go crazy. We don't go so far out of our lanes that it belongs on something else. And that's why, we produced this Christmas movie. We're not airing it on Food Network because Food Network is all about food information and how to and prep. We're not doing that. On Food Network, we're running the White House Thanksgiving, where we send Trisha Yearwood to cook with Dr. Jill Biden in the White House. That makes sense on Food Network for the holidays. But for a movie, we don't want to put a scripted movie on that network because that doesn't fulfill the brand promise to our viewers.
That's right. So let's pivot a little bit here. Instead of speaking specifically about the content, let's talk a little bit about, back to sort of talking about careers and career development and mentoring. So who has mentored you throughout your career, and how did their influence help you, Kathleen?
Well, I'll start with the very first person who helped me, and most of you are going to be way too young to even know who this is. Actually, 2 people very early on in my career. I was lucky enough to be an intern for Dr. Ruth Westheimer when she had a very short-lived television show. And she is one of the nicest people you will ever meet. And she took a real interest in me and was very helpful in my career. She got me an internship and then a job offer when I got out of college. I mean, she was just a really lovely person who helped me out. The other on-air person who was extremely valuable and helpful to me he's passed away, unfortunately, but Andy Rooney, who used to be a correspondent on 60 Minutes. When I was young and working at CBS Network News, and I was in my 20s, I was a kid, it turned out that I lived very near him in a town in Connecticut. And when he found this out, he said, well, would you like me to drive you home? I thought, wow, somebody from 60 Minutes is going to drive the little kid home? Sure. So I started carpooling with him, which was very funny because he was an old man at the time. And as I said to my kids, it was like riding with Mr. Magoo. He would like be looking at me talking and not really at the road. But he was this funny old curmudgeon-y guy who was so sweet. And he had been he had started his career as a writer with the Stars and Stripes in World War II, which was an old military publication. And we started talking about that. I'm a big history buff. And I told him about some of the writing that I was doing. And I wanted to, be a magazine writer or write for news. So he asked me to start sharing my writing with him, and then he would critique it. He started helping me get in front of the right people at CBS. And it was just one of these random kind of, do you want to ride home? Which the shy me was like, oh my God, how can I say yes? And then the sane me said, how do you say no when somebody this important says they're going to help you? Which is, that's a thing that young people, I think, and I think, unfortunately, this is a young woman's thing so often. You have to get over your shyness. And if somebody offers to help you, or if somebody opens the door even a tiny bit, take it. Yeah. Take it, because they don't do that if they don't mean it. So don't think, oh, I'm bothering them, or, oh, they don't really mean to give me a ride home. Take them up on it. And similarly, if there's somebody that interests you that you think has something to teach, approach them and ask them if they would mentor you. People have done that to me. I have mentored probably 24 people at our company who approach, this is separate from like our organized mentoring program, but people who took the time to reach out and say, I'd really love to talk to you. Would you enter, sort of a semi-formal mentoring? Of course, if I have time to do that, of course I will. And because we all remember what it was like, but you need to ask somebody, and that takes guts. So I would say, not only will you benefit by asking, it makes you look good if you ask. What it says is you care, you want to learn, you have an interest in the future for your career. So I would really advocate that you people look around. If there's somebody that you want to get to know, it's only flattering to them, and they'll tell you if they just don't have the time. But it's a good thing for you to do, and it's good practice for speaking up.
I think that's really great advice. To take the initiative and sort of lean in when someone is reaching out to you, and it's accepting the help, which so often so many of us are not.
Well, let me tell a quick story about you, Audrey. We have a new mentoring program that's been started at Discovery, and Audrey is heading it up. And she reached out to a bunch of us saying, oh, can you spread the word? Can you sort of, let your team leaders know? But I think most of us came right back to her and said, well, we'll do it too. Because all you got to do is ask. We are all happy to pay it forward. We all benefited. We all know how hard this business is to get ahead. And we also know that if Audrey's in charge of this group, she's really bringing the best and the brightest to it to begin with. So these are all the people that we want to keep in our company. And it's better for business if we, lean in to these smart young people.
100%. This is what it's all about. That's the reason we do the mentoring, right? We want to spot and develop our top talent. So let me ask you, how did Dr. Ruth and Andy impact your leadership style? And how did you develop a leadership style?
That was sort of over time. They each gave me similar advice, which I desperately needed, which is don't be so shy, speak up, don't keep your thoughts to yourself. It took me way too long to learn that. Audrey knows me as a big mouth, but that took a long time to develop, because I was somebody who never even spoke up in meetings. My face would get bright red if people looked at me. I was just super, super shy when I first started out. Was it imposter syndrome? Who knows? But it was a very hard thing to overcome. And I'm sure that many of you listening know what I'm talking about. And if I can give you one piece of advice, just go for it. When you're in a meeting and you're feeling shy, be the first person to say something, because once you get it out of the way, you relax. But you got to speak up because people can't read your mind. But that was something that each one of them kind of called me out on is, oh, you're very smart, or you're very, you've got to let people see that. You have to speak up. And I didn't realize, oh, I'm just kind of being very quiet. And I was showing them a side of me because they were being very nice. But in a big room, I wouldn't say anything because I was just young and intimidated by all those people. And you got to get over that, or else you will be relegated to the back of the room forever.
100%. You have to be able to sort of show people that you have a point of view on things. So being able to speak up in a room, I think, is one of the most important skills.
And then I think there's one thing I think is really important. And Audrey, I hope I do this. You got to remember that being a leader is not being bossy.
Yes.
Being a leader is being nice and listening and getting the team excited. And it's not like, here's what we're going to do. Here's what I want. That's being bossy. Huge difference. And I've worked for some of those people. Those are the people you then want to leave because you don't feel like you're either valued or oftentimes being led in the right direction, because one person can't have all the answers.
That's for sure. That is for sure. So if you early in your career, right? If you are someone who has really grand visions, which I think everyone should, by the way, like we should reach as high as we can. You want to get to the C-suite. What do you really need to focus on to do that?
It's very, very funny that you say that, because that was never anything I wanted. It has all happened slightly accidentally. And I kind of think that's why it's happened for me personally. I really wanted to be a producer. I wanted to produce documentary films. That was my goal. The other things kind of happened a little bit by accident. And to tell you the truth, I almost think if I'd been overly focused on kind of elbows and maneuvering, you see right through those people, right?
Yeah.
And I think that if you want to get ahead and be ambitious, be really good at what you do. Don't be shy about it. Don't let other people take credit for it, but just be the best at what you do and be super helpful to the cause. You don't work for yourself, you work for a company. So if you see things that will help the company, I think one of the most detrimental things people will do is they'll keep their good ideas to themselves because they don't want other people to get sick. They want to be the best in the room. That's not the motivation. The motivation is you want to be your own personal best, but then you want to share what you have to make the team the best. Now, if you worry that you need to sort of do that publicly so that people know it's your idea, that's fine. But don't sort of hold things in because you want to be the only person, who's got a successful team or a good project or anything else. I think it's those people who contribute in multiple ways. And also you want to be the person who, when times are tough, you're the one that the boss asks to help, or you're the one that the boss says, do you have any ideas about this? That is so valuable. As soon as you are the one that the boss turns to, and so much of that is up to you, that's kind of your golden ticket. So you want to be that person. So when you're striving, don't think about the C-suite. Think about, if you're a producer, I want to have the best stories. If you're a casting agent, I want to bring in the most diverse group of new candidates to put on screen. Be the best at what you're doing. And then that should help you get to whatever the next step is. And also don't be shy about what you want to do. Your boss can't read your mind. I think, it's sort of, when I say it happened accidentally for me, our old boss, Judy Gerard, who Audrey knows well, sort of said to me at one point when I was, producing, a lot of shows, she said, what do you want to do? Do you want to run the programming team? I thought, never really thought, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. So you got to kind of plant the seed when you have the opportunity, because until she asked me, I had never even thought about that. But it's just always good to sort of keep your options open and just be really good at what you do.
Kathleen, I'm glad you mentioned this concept of until she asked you, you hadn't really thought about it. As a leader, how important is it as a leader that you have your eye and, sort of your finger on the pulse of people who may not ask, but are ready?
So important. So important. And one of the things that I always do, and Audrey knows this very well, I always promote from within.
Yeah.
I love, love, love to find people who are really good. I mean, a perfect example of this is just recently, a really terrific guy who's been running the ID network for years and years decided to retire, which, you never want to hear because you like your valuable people. But then looking around, there was this person that I had been really kind of, mentoring and working with and really sort of being impressed by, who was the head of development for our TLC network. TLC and ID don't have a huge amount in common, except that they're both really good at pulling in a female audience. So I went to him and I said, look, it's kind of a big leap, both in level as well as in focus, but I really think you should be the president of ID. And I think at first he was kind of shocked that I said that. And then I didn't go to the outside to find somebody to run it, a president of some other network. I said, no, I really think that you have what it takes and we can work closely together and we're going to make this work. Well, he's been in the job for, I don't know how many months, and he's killing it. I mean, he's doing a great job. So I think that, promoting from within, not only do you get the best people oftentimes, but it sends such a great message to the team that if you work hard and if you put in the time and if you're smart and, you do the right things, that you could be the president of a network someday or whatever your goal is. And I just love setting the tone for the organization by doing that always.
Yeah. And Kathleen, it's funny because as someone who's worked for you for so many years, I think that you also are really good at tapping women on your leadership team and sort of saying to them, I think you are ready. I remember a specific instance where, we were looking for someone to do a bell ringing or a speech at a bell ringing. And I'm like, Kathleen, this one can't do it. This one can't do it. That one can't do it. And I'll never forget this. You said to me, well, why don't you do it? And I remember thinking, wow, okay. It wasn't something I thought of for myself, but I will be forever grateful to you for thinking of me as someone who could do that. So this idea of promoting women leaders, other women promoting women, I think is a wonderful thing, and you do it very well. So,
well, thank you. A little bit of it, I think, has to do with, as you said in my intro, I do have 3 daughters. I am thinking always about women and I have a very mixed feeling about, do we talk about, women in leadership, women, does that help or hurt? And I'm always a little bit conflicted about that. But I think the best thing though is sort of putting deserving people up on a pedestal. And for years we've had to fight very hard. I hope for all of your generation that it's less of a fight. But I mean, I still remember my mother, who she was the only female vice president in a very male skewing industry. And I still remember the things she would come home at night and talk about to my dad, and just some of the incredible sort of things that she was put through and just all the fighting that she did to sort of pave the way for me and for other women. And I feel like I have a responsibility to carry that forward. And I do, I'm very proud of the fact that among my networks, most of them are led by female presidents. And I'm incredibly proud of that, especially because, our audience is predominantly women. And not that I think that, men can't program women's networks. Of course they can, but I just love the fact that we have women making content for women.
I could not agree more. So I think we have a question coming in.
Okay, so we have an anonymous attendee asking a question, so I'll just go ahead and read that for you.
All right, awesome.
They've asked, is Discovery returning to the office soon? Do you have advice for young professionals adjusting to the hybrid workplace?
Oh boy, you want to take that one, Audrey?
I'm going to leave that. Well, we have returned to the office already. We're in 3 days per week. I think there's still some flexibility there, and people are making the adjustment. I don't know what the future holds because of, I think that there's been a major change here. And so we all have to sort of adjust and figure out how we're going to make this new world work. But so far, I think it's going well. Kathleen, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that's been wonderful, even though it's been a bit of an adjustment to get that muscle memory back of, putting on your lady shoes and getting up early to commute. I mean, all those things that we haven't done for a while. But I do think what's really interesting for your generation, for the younger generation, is one of the things that we're hearing is a very adamant, I don't necessarily want to go back 5 days a week. You know, and I totally understand that. If that's kind of you guys have lived digitally your whole lives, unlike me and Audrey. So I think there's going to be a huge shift in how business runs. I mean, one of the things that we're hearing from some of our competitors is they're coming after some of our people and saying, well, you can work from home forever. You know, now, would I hold them to that? Probably not, because that's really never going to work from a business standpoint for everybody to work at home, in my opinion. But I do think things are going to change. I would say, honestly, though, right now, even though the adjustment might be tough for people, especially if you're early on in your career, my advice would be grit your teeth, put a smile on your face, and go back to the office, because it's not exactly torture. We've all done it before. But I will say, interestingly, the patience for people grumbling about it is thin. Wouldn't you say, Audrey? It's like,
yeah, I think we're back. So let's just make it work.
Yeah,
that's where we are. Yeah, I think I have another question, Kathleen. It looks like Sinead will be our next person. Sinead, are you there?
Hi.
Did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did. Thank you for asking.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Okay. What school are you with?
I currently go to Columbia University, where I'm getting my MA in Film and Media Studies.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely been really interesting to hear you speak about your first stages of entering into television. And I'm curious if you have any advice for those who are hoping to enter this field, but perhaps don't have too much experience producing. Basically, how can one best market themselves in that way?
Well, you should, for your first jobs, you shouldn't have any experience, really. It's really more about where you have been. What you should have been doing as a student, clearly you are, and all of you are, I think, because you're part of this group. You should be doing everything within your power to get involved somehow. Nobody expects an entry-level employee to have produced a documentary or to, of course not. But as a student, if you've been able to do that, that would be great. And you should tell us about that. But the most important thing that you can do is be an intern. And I'm going to be really honest with you. It's not so much what you learn at the internship. It's who you meet at the internship, and the fact that you can put it on your resume, and the fact that you are then part of like the NBC Page program. I mean, I know so many people have gone through the NBC Page program who have described, and I'm generalizing here, but who've said, yeah, well, I fetched a lot of coffee. I did a lot of, checking in of audience members to, Fallon, whatever the job was. But then you're in that network. You're in the network that posts jobs early. You're in the network that knows somebody who knows somebody. An internship is so much more valuable than these sometimes menial tasks that an intern does. What it does is it says you've gotten the internship, but then it says you've got all these connections. The other thing I would say is I hope that everyone is using their college networking, whatever their, alumni networking situation is. Now, obviously at a place like Columbia in New York, you're going to have a lot more media people than, if you go to school in Iowa, but you never know. So make sure that you're tapped into whatever the alumni association is. If you find someone who does something in media that you're interested in, even if they're retired, whatever it is, send them a note. We all say yes to people that we went to college, that, went to our college. I think that's sort of a loyalty code. But reach out. Those kinds of connections can really help you get places. And the other thing is, when you find these places, ask for an informational interview. Ask somebody for, a half a minute Zoom call or something. Because again, if you impress somebody on the other end of the phone, they'll start passing your resume around. And that's just a good way to get in the door. But don't think that we all expect an entry-level candidate to have a whole bunch of experience. We're looking more for enthusiasm and taking advantage of opportunities like internships than we are for, show me your resume reel. I would never expect an early person to have one.
And Kathleen, to that point, I mean, if you have, which we all know this exists, but if you have an economics degree or a different kind of degree, can you still get into television?
I was a modern American literature.
There you go.
Yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, I mean, this is, and if this information doesn't make people happy, I apologize ahead of time, but I wouldn't overly focus, to be honest, as a college student on media. We want well-rounded people, and certainly one of the things that any industry needs, but certainly any industry in the media, you need to know how to write. You absolutely need to know how to write, and you need to know grammar and little things like that. And I hate to be so school marmish about it all, but it's really important that your writing skills are good, both for sending a note to somebody, sending a follow-up whatever it is. Writing is your first thing that we will all see about you. Please take care and make sure that it's good. But I mean, I love when I'm looking at somebody's resume to see if they were on the school paper, or if they wrote a thesis or something that sort of says, okay, this person didn't just focus on how to set up camera equipment while they were in college.
Yeah. Thank you, Sinead.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Good luck. Good luck with your career.
Yeah. I think we have another anonymous question on the line.
Yeah, so I have another question from one of the attendees.
Awesome.
They've asked, do you have any advice for international applicants? Does Discovery hire international candidates for entry-level positions?
Well, we are a global company. We have offices all over the world. So yes, we absolutely do. I don't know if we have provided, or if you know, Audrey, sort of how one goes about tapping into things outside.
Yes, I think you can go to Discovery Careers, careers at discovery.com. I mean, if it's a quick Google search, but you'll be able to find any open positions that we have available on the Discovery corporate website.
Yes, so we are a company that values international applicants, particularly people who speak, foreign languages. I mean, that is in no way a detriment. That is an added bonus.
A very good thing. Okay, Hannah, are you there? Thank you, Kate. Kate just put the link in for jobs.discovery.com. Perfect. Hannah, hello.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, how are you?
We're great. And what school are you with, Hannah?
I'm with Drake University, so I'm out in the Midwest. I'm not on the coast, so I'm coming to you from a different time zone. But I just had a quick question for you guys. So I have a minor in leadership studies here at my university. And as a woman who's really interested in leadership, do you guys have any tips for selling yourself as a leader in interviews or on your resume or cover letter? I'm just having a little bit of trouble finding a way to kind of sell myself as someone who's interested in leadership without being too forward for an entry-level candidate.
Kathleen, do you want to start? Or
I would say if you have done things, I think the challenge is saying that you're interested in leadership sort of only sounds like part of the story, because leadership is not a career. It's media leadership, or whatever your business is, whatever you decide, it's leading in that group. So I think you want to not just make it sound like I want to be the boss. It's more, what sort of leadership you envision. Certainly, I would take advantage of any sort of opportunity while you're at school, whether it's being the leader of a student organization or a leader of a charitable endeavor. Do something that exhibits leadership, so that we know that you've not just spent time in a classroom learning about it, but that you've actually done it.
And Hannah, you probably already have done that. I'm sure you've been involved in special projects for school where you had sort of a lead role in executing those projects. So you should talk about that during your interviews and what you learned from those experiences, I think.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Yes.
Yeah, good luck.
Don't overthink it. You're already a leader. You're already participating in this. So you're already a leader.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I have another question from the audience.
All right.
Somebody is asking, in your busy media career, how have you made time for your personal life?
Kathleen, that's a good one. I'm going to give that one to you.
The fact that we're both laughing kind of answers that question. I think I have 3 kids, and I made a decision that was a little unusual at the time. My husband and I, college sweethearts, got married right out of school, started our family very early. And all of our friends said we were nuts. First of all, I get married when you're, whatever we were, 22, starting having babies at 24. Our friends were like, this is not 1950. What are you doing? I am so grateful that we did that, because as crazy as it was so much easier, I think, than if I had done what a lot of my friends did, which is waited until I was so entrenched in my career that it was just, harder to take time off, harder to, manage. But all that said, it's a challenge. And early on, I spent time working and taking care of my kids, nothing else. I mean, it was like, but that was fine. That was my choice. I think you just have to realize you can't do everything at all times. You have to sort of choose your time. So when my kids were little, I didn't hang out with a lot of friends, because my free time I really wanted to spend with them. Now that they're out of the house, I spend a lot of time with my friends, and I am much better about leaving work at 5 or 6 o'clock instead of just staying all night. So I think you got to set boundaries, but you also have to acknowledge that things will change as your lifestyle changes. You can't do it all at once, or you will just pass out, I think.
I couldn't agree more, Kathleen, because the truth is it's very fluid, right? There are some days when it's, full tilt boogie, as they say, and there's just no way that I'm going to be able to get in some of the personal things that I'd like to get in. But, there are other days when, hey, I'm sneaking away. It's 3 o'clock because I'm getting a mani-pedi, and it's okay because I've been working for, 24 hours a day for 4 days straight. So I think you just sort of, you figure out how to balance it as best you can. Another thing that I don't think we should overthink. This is a new world, new day. As long as you're getting the work done and delivering on the business goals, and you feel like you have some flexibility, then I see no reason that you shouldn't be able to take advantage of it. We're all adult professionals. Your boss is an adult professional. They'll understand, and all they care is that the work is getting done.
And that's so important, Audrey. I think that's one more reason why you want to be the best at what you do in the room, because no one is ever going to say, Audrey, where are you? Because Audrey is killing it always. And Audrey is, doing her own thing. And I like to think, my boss says the same. He's not saying, where are you? He knows I'm working, and he knows I'm getting it done, whether or not I'm in the office all the time. I think, again, you earn that. That's something that you earn by being a really good, accomplished employee. So it's one more reason as you're doing your day job to just get to the point where you can be that person, because you can't at the age of 25 go out for a mani-pedi at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
They can't?
Well, I don't think they've earned it yet, but you will if if you sort of become that superstar that I think you all want to become. Then it comes with some privileges, and it does make making a work-life balance a little bit easier once you have the ability to kind of take more control of your schedule.
That sounds good. All right. Candace, are you there, Candace? Oh, hi, Candace.
Hi, how are you guys?
Hi, how are you? What school are you with?
Good. So I actually graduated from Queens College in 2019. And since then I've done a bunch of different things, but right now I'm actually at work. I'm an operations manager for Crunch Fitness, and actually recently interviewed to be a digital marketing coordinator, which is really exciting. So my big question here, especially applying in a pandemic, everything is digital, everything is online. My strong suit personally is interviewing. And the people I know, right? So in a world where everything is digital and everything is online, what can someone do to get noticed? Are there keywords? Are there things that you're looking for? Yeah.
I would say if what you want to do, and if the jobs that you are applying for is digital marketing, you got to market yourself. You got to make whatever it is you're sending to people take notice. I mean, that's in many ways, that's so much of the focus of Audrey's job, because she's out, pitching stories and developing strategies to get things noticed, when everybody else is trying to do the same thing. And she's always thinking about how's it going to rise to the top. You need to approach this the exact same way. You need to make whatever you send out, and it's got to look like a piece of, in my opinion, it's got to look like an incredible piece of marketing material, not a digital resume.
I would agree with that. Is there a short video that you could create, Candace, that would be a moment of delight for the person who's going to interview you? I think that gives you some flexibility. It shows your creativity, and that you have some ideas that you're ready to share when you get to the company. So I would suggest that you try just approaching it as, hey, I'm going to create a great piece of content digitally, and then you share it with the people that are going to be talking with you.
Amazing. I never would have thought of that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right. Our next questioner is Ricari. Hello, Ricari.
Oh, it's for Carrie. How are you guys?
Carrie, thank you. Okay.
So
Carrie, go ahead.
I'm from the College of Charleston. I'm studying communications, graduating in the spring, cross my fingers.
Yay.
And I'm interested in the TV film production, but I heard you guys talk, well, Miss Finch, I heard you talk a little bit about how you started right after college in a job that you didn't really want. So my question, I'm just curious to know, what was your toughest challenge in your career journey overall, and how you overcame that?
Wow. To be clear, I did want the job that I got, and I was very lucky to go to Apple. It was a little bit of a tangential, it was making videos about computers when I wanted to make videos about stories, about people. So it was just sort of a tangential thing, but still really worth doing. Because I felt like it was, a brand that people knew and loved, and it was a prestigious place to be. So there were a lot of upsides to it. So I think you should always evaluate any opportunity based on what you can take away from it. Is it a place that people know? Are you going to learn some skills that can be used someplace else? But I think the hardest challenge I had was, back in those days, was landing those really early jobs. And I think a truism is, once you're in those early jobs, when I was at Apple, and then when I was working in local news, I spent most of my day doing a good job, but I spent a huge part of the day looking for another job, looking for a job that was going to be, more of what I wanted to do. And it was kind of exhausting when I think back to those early days in my career. And I think this is a good thing. I was always looking for the next opportunity. I would go to a networking event, or I would meet somebody, or I would write down people's names that I wanted to contact later. I was like a researcher, constantly researching what's next. And I think that's super valuable in the beginning when you're just starting out. I would really recommend that. Don't get discouraged. I will tell you a story. I was working in local news in New York, and I wasn't loving it. I really wanted to do something bigger and better. So I applied to law school. I thought, all right, you know what? I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to sort of use that as, I don't know what I was thinking. And I got in, and I was like literally days away from going to law school when I realized, wait a minute, this is not going to solve my problem. Just because I'm not happy in this local news room right now, I still love media. I still love journalism. I still love making content. I don't want to go be a lawyer. So thank goodness I kind of wised up and didn't do that. But I think you always have to remember, those first jobs, they're going to be boring. They're going to be, there's a lot of things about a first job. I've said this to all three of my daughters. Well, it's so boring. I learned to do better than this in my first job. Well, yeah, a first job is boring because it's the simplest thing that needs being done in the whole office. But don't let that discourage you. Just use it as motivation to find the next job. Don't decide, well, media isn't for me because I'm getting coffee. That's not what you're going to do if you're good, but it is what you might do for a year.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I have one, I think this will be our last question based on the timing here. Naima, are you here? I see you. Hello. Will you pronounce your name for us, please?
Naima, you pronounced it correctly. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yes.
All
Hi.
right. Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Okay. I graduated from Brooklyn College in 2018. So I'm still a bit early in my career. Unfortunately, I have not had the best luck with internships as an undergrad. In fact, I never received one as one. So I'm asking this question for those that may be in the same position as I was when I was an undergrad. For those that was not able to get an internship, where does that leave us? Because once you graduate, it's a bit harder than for those that's actually a student to get an internship. So where are the opportunities for those that are fresh out of college or might be a few years past that? How did we get an opportunity in? How do we get that door open for us?
What can you tell us a little bit about what it is you want to do eventually? What's your focus?
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I would like to do content curation, social media marketing, or post-production.
One thing that I would suggest that you do is if you go online, there are so many production companies and digital media companies. I mean, in New York, especially, if that's where you still are, they are everywhere. You know, every block, there's a ton of them. I would start doing some research into those companies, and I would share with networks. I mean, classmates from this organization, you know, whatever it is, find some resources that list all those companies and just start looking for any entry-level job they may have, including, could you do some, you know, could you be a free intern for them for a project? Could you try, you know, see if you can get your foot in the door in one of those production companies. It is a lot easier to get in the door for an early career job in a production company as like a production assistant than it is in a big media company. It's a little bit harder at a big media company in a lot of ways. So I would just start banging on doors of these independent production companies and see what kind of opportunity, even if it's like a part-time freelance thing, which many of them are, see if you can get your foot in that way.
Naima, you could start by doing, you know, looking at the production companies for your favorite shows. I mean, if you like a show, you're going to have an, you know, sort of an authentic passion for that, the content that that production company creates. So why don't you start with those companies first and see if you have any luck, which I'm sure you will.
I love the confidence you have in me. Thank you.
I'm sure you will, Naima. I'm sure you will.
Thank you.
All right, Kathleen. I think our time together is coming to a close. I really want to thank you so much. You're just awesome. But I already knew that because I have the privilege of working with you every day. But thank you for taking the time to participate in this session.